The air hung heavy and humid, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a primal perfume that masked something else, something acrid and strange. Mark, a seasoned hiker whose boots knew every treacherous route and muddy incline of the Pacific Northwest, paused, his breath clouding momentarily in the cool, shaded forest. He'd veered off the main trail hours ago, seeking the solace of true wilderness, a deep immersion that only the untouched parts of the Olympic National Forest could provide. Sunlight, filtered through the dense canopy of ancient firs and cedars, dappled the forest floor in shifting patterns, illuminating patches of vibrant moss and fern. But something was wrong. An unnatural stillness had fallen, silencing even the chattering jays and distant calls of ravens that usually punctuated the wilderness symphony. Then he saw it. A dark mass, partially obscured by a fallen log and a tangle of salal bushes, lay sprawled in a shallow, muddy hollow. It was impossibly large, far too large for any known forest creature. As he drew closer, a cold dread began to coil in his stomach. The smell intensified, metallic and strangely sweet, unmistakably the odor of death. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drum against the encroaching silence. He pushed aside a curtain of ferns, revealing the grotesque tableau. It was undeniably biological, organic, yet utterly alien in its scale and form. A huge, dark hand, larger than any human head, lay splayed on the moss, its fingers thick and covered in coarse, dark hair. A guttural gasp escaped his lips, a sound swallowed by the oppressive quiet. He saw what looked like a torso, massive and indistinct, but his eyes were drawn to a single horrifying detail protruding from the mass, a monstrous, dark, almost obsidian-like organ glistening dully in the filtered light. It was a heart, impossibly massive, torn and laid bare. The sight was so profoundly disturbing, so out of place, that his mind struggled to process it. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, to erase the image from his memory, yet a morbid fascination held him captive for a few agonizing moments. He pulled out his phone, his hands trembling violently, and snapped a few grainy, indistinct photos through the leaves, a futile attempt to document the impossible. Then, without another glance, he turned and ran, not walking, not hiking, but a primal, desperate bolt through the undergrowth, not stopping until the distant roar of a highway offered a sliver of sanity. He never told anyone what he saw, not truly, not the whole truth. The photos remained locked away, a haunting digital secret. The memory, however, was a persistent, chilling whisper that would forever accompany him on walks through any forest. Miles away, cloistered in an unassuming brick building tucked away on a quiet university campus, lived Dr. Alistair Finch. Alistair was a name that evoked images of old-world charm, but he was anything but. A brilliant bioanthropologist, his mind was a labyrinth of complex theories and unconventional hypotheses, often dismissed as fringe by the academic mainstream. He was known for his unorthodox research methods, often delving into areas others deemed sensational or unscientific. His success, however, was undeniable, with several groundbreaking papers reshaping the understanding of early hominid migration patterns and genetic adaptations. Yet, despite his professional achievements, Alistair was a reclusive figure, his sharp intellect often obscured by a melancholy that clung to him like a second skin. It was a melancholy born of profound loss, a past tragedy that had not just shaped his worldview, but shattered it, leaving behind a quiet desperation. He lived a life of deliberate simplicity, surrounded by books and specimens, the sterile precision of his lab a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil that simmered beneath his calm exterior. He rarely socialized, finding solace in the silent communion with ancient bones and forgotten DNA, remnants of lives long past, easier to understand than the nuances of the living. One dreary Tuesday afternoon, as rain lashed against the windows of his lab, a nondescript delivery van pulled up. A burly man in a uniform delivered a package, heavy and oddly shaped, sealed with an array of tamper-proof tape and multiple layers of protective wrapping. It bore no return address, only a generic shipping label indicating its origin somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Alistair signed for it with a detached air, accustomed to receiving strange specimens, though usually with accompanying documentation. This, however, felt different. A faint tremor of unease, a flicker of something akin to apprehension, ran through him as he carried the box to his workbench. He retrieved his specialized cutting tools, feeling the unusual weight of the parcel. As he carefully peeled back layers of industrial-grade foam and vacuum-sealed plastic, a distinct, earthy scent, mingled with something musky and strangely vital, began to fill the sterile air of his lab. His brow furrowed in concentration, his scientific curiosity warring with an almost superstitious reluctance. He finally removed the innermost layer, revealing a specimen unlike anything he had ever encountered. Encased in a custom-fitted, cryogenic, gel-filled container was a deeply vascularized organ, dark and dense, resembling a heart, yet monstrously proportioned. It pulsed with a faint, almost imperceptible rhythm, even in its preserved state, a phantom heartbeat that seemed to echo the silent chamber of his own. His initial skepticism, a scientist's trained defense against the improbable, immediately surged. This was absurd, a hoax, surely, some elaborate prank. Yet, as his practiced eye scanned its intricate structure, the sheer biological complexity, the precise, almost alien vascular network, a chilling sense of authenticity began to seep in. This was no taxidermied fabrication, no crude sculpture. This was real. A strange resonance began to stir within him, a faint, personal echo that he couldn't immediately place. It felt familiar, in an unsettling, almost primal way. The scale, the sheer, impossible size of it, suggested a creature of myth, not of reality. He meticulously began to prepare his instruments, his hands moving with an almost unconscious precision. The anonymity of the package, the secrecy surrounding its arrival, only deepened the mystery and intensified his resolve. He activated the microscopic scanner, preparing to peer into the unknown cellular landscape of this biological enigma. This was not just a specimen, it was a challenge, a profound question mark dropped into the carefully ordered world of his scientific understanding. And something within him, a long dormant spark, recognized the magnitude of what lay before him. Please subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. The specimen, carefully extracted and placed under the high-powered microscope in Dr. Finch's secluded laboratory, immediately presented a cascade of anomalies. Its cellular structure defied textbook definitions, exhibiting an intricate, almost crystalline matrix unlike anything he had ever observed in mammalian tissue. Layers of specialized cells designed for incredible tensile strength and rapid regeneration were woven together with an efficiency that hinted at an evolutionary path far removed from conventional biology. He spent hours, then days, hunched over the eyepieces, his initial scientific skepticism battling fiercely with a burgeoning sense of awe. The genetic markers, when finally isolated and sequenced with his advanced custom-built apparatus, were a jigsaw puzzle of impossible pieces. There were sequences that vaguely resembled primate DNA, yet interwoven were stretches of code completely alien, devoid of any known terrestrial analog. It was as if some master geneticist had playfully, or perhaps deliberately, combined disparate life forms into a single, cohesive, and incredibly robust entity. The deeper Dr. Finch delved, the more his established scientific understanding wavered. The specimen challenged every paradigm he held dear, every lecture he had ever given, every paper he had ever published. This wasn't merely an undiscovered species, it was a fundamental redefinition of what life could be. The implications gnawed at him, a relentless intellectual itch. To publish these findings conventionally would invite not scientific peer review, but outright ridicule, accusations of fraud, and perhaps even professional ruin. The scientific community, often resistant to radical shifts, preferred incremental progress, not seismic upheavals that threatened to dismantle decades of accepted theory. This inherent scientific incredulity was his first, and in many ways, most formidable obstacle. He imagined the derisive laughter, the scathing editorials, the dismissive pronouncements from esteemed colleagues who would never deign to truly examine his evidence. Yet, a more insidious threat began to materialize, a shadow creeping at the edges of his isolated existence. Unbeknownst to Dr. Finch, his preliminary analysis, though hermetically sealed within his private lab, had not gone entirely unnoticed. Certain highly sophisticated data algorithms deployed by a clandestine organization known only as the Conglomerate had flagged his unusual power consumption spikes, the specific chemical reagents he was ordering, and the highly encrypted yet nascent attempts to cross-reference his unique genetic sequences with obscure, unclassified biological databases. The Conglomerate, a shadowy entity woven into the fabric of global industrial and military complexes, possessed a voracious appetite for anomalous biological findings. Their operatives, ruthlessly efficient and utterly devoid of ethical qualms, sought to identify, acquire, and ultimately weaponize any discovery that offered a strategic advantage. A specimen exhibiting unprecedented cellular regeneration and alien genetic markers would be a prize of unimaginable value to them. Dr. Finch's reclusive nature and unorthodox methods, which he believed protected his secrets, had in fact made him a prime target, a solitary beacon in the pervasive digital darkness. The initial faint tremor of his discovery had now created ripples, and a very dangerous predator was beginning to stir. Desperate to validate his findings, yet acutely aware of the risk, Dr. Finch attempted to cross-reference his data with existing publicly accessible genetic databases. The results were consistently negative, confirming the specimen's unique origin but offering no clues to its identity. He then reached out to a select few, former mentors and trusted colleagues, individuals whose intellectual integrity he respected and whose discretion he believed he could rely upon. Each contact was handled with extreme caution, veiled in layers of encryption and ambiguous language. He shared fragments, theoretical hypotheticals, never the full truth, gauging their reactions, looking for any flicker of recognition or insight. Even under strict non-disclosure agreements, the abstract nature of his queries often met with a polite, bewildered curiosity or a gentle suggestion that perhaps he was overworking himself. Their inability to process even the partial information underscored the truly unprecedented nature of his discovery. Meanwhile, a growing paranoia began to settle in. His lab, once a sanctuary of scientific exploration, now felt vulnerable. He spent sleepless nights fortifying his digital defenses, installing advanced firewalls, and encrypting every scrap of data related to the specimen. Physical security was paramount. Reinforced locks, motion sensors, and even a rudimentary silent alarm system became part of his daily routine. He began to physically inspect the perimeter of his remote property, searching for any sign of intrusion, any disturbed foliage, any unfamiliar vehicle tracks. The implications of his discovery weighed heavily on him, creating a constant hum of anxiety beneath the surface of his scientific exhilaration. He felt a profound sense of responsibility, not just to science, but to the extraordinary, unknown creature from which the specimen originated. This wasn't just a research project, it was a delicate dance with the unknown, a perilous journey into uncharted biological territory with unseen forces already beginning to close in. The initial scientific challenge had morphed into a race against an invisible yet palpably menacing adversary. The silence of Dr. Finch's lab, once a sanctuary of focused research, had become a theater of paranoia. Each hum of equipment, every flicker of a monitor, now seemed imbued with a sinister undertone, a phantom echo of unseen observers. The digital landscape surrounding his work was no longer merely a tool for analysis, it was a battleground. He had implemented every cybersecurity protocol he knew, creating layers of encryption and firewalls that would confound even state-sponsored hackers, yet the attempts to breach his systems were relentless, sophisticated, and increasingly aggressive. Data packets, coded with malicious intent, slammed against his digital defenses like waves against a fortified shore. These weren't amateur probes, they were precision strikes, indicative of vast resources and a singular, ruthless determination. He knew their tactics. They started subtly, with phishing attempts disguised as academic inquiries, then escalated to more direct assaults, vectoring through obscure ports, attempting to exploit zero-day vulnerabilities. He spent sleepless nights not just analyzing the specimen, but also fortifying his digital fortress, constantly patching, updating, and reconfiguring. The rival organization, operating under the veiled command of industrialist Alaric Thorne, was closing in with chilling efficiency. Thorne, a man whose ambition knew no ethical bounds, saw in Dr. Finch's discovery not a scientific marvel, but a raw, untapped resource, a biological blueprint for a new generation of weaponized extremophiles or regenerative compounds that could redefine warfare and medicine, all for his exclusive profit. The thought curdled Dr. Finch's stomach. He wasn't just protecting a specimen, he was protecting a profound mystery from being perverted into a tool of destruction. Amidst this digital siege, Dr. Finch found solace, a strange, almost spiritual connection in the physical analysis of the heart tissue itself. He had meticulously sectioned, stained, and magnified, scrutinizing cellular structures under electron microscopes. It was during one of these late-night sessions, amplifying the micro-vibrations of the tissue's cellular activity into an audible waveform, that he first noticed it. A rhythm, not the chaotic flutter of dying cells, but a distinct underlying pulsation, a steady, almost melodic beat that resonated with an uncanny regularity. He isolated it, filtering out biological noise, and played it back through a specialized acoustic sensor. The sound that emerged was unlike anything he had ever encountered in biological samples. It possessed a depth, a complexity that transcended mere physiological function. It was a rhythm that seemed to speak, not with words, but with an intrinsic, emotional cadence. As he listened, something within him stirred. He placed his own hand over his chest, feeling the familiar thump-thump of his own heart. He closed his eyes, focusing on the specimen's phantom beat, letting it wash over him. And then, it happened, a profound, almost visceral recognition. The specimen's rhythm, when sustained and amplified, mirrored the irregular, fervent thrumming of his own heart, particularly in moments of high emotion or stress. It was the same accelerated, almost frantic beat he felt when pushing his intellect to its limits, when wrestling with a complex problem, when the adrenaline surged through his veins from the constant threat of intrusion. It was the beat of a mind fully engaged, fully alive, yet aware of an underlying tension. This wasn't just a biological coincidence, it felt profoundly personal, a connection that bypassed logic and rooted itself deep in his subconscious. It was unsettling, exhilarating, and deeply moving. He felt a phantom thread tugging at his own emotional core, linking him to the unknown creature in a way he hadn't anticipated. This personal resonance fueled his research, pushing him toward breakthroughs that even he, with his unconventional approach, hadn't dared to imagine. He focused on the protein structures, which were remarkably complex and efficient. Using advanced spectrometry and molecular modeling, he identified unique sequences of amino acids that formed resilient, self-repairing matrices. These proteins seemed to grant the tissue an almost instantaneous regenerative capability, far exceeding anything observed in known terrestrial life forms. Microdamage, induced experimentally, would heal at an astonishing rate, sometimes within minutes, leaving no trace. Further analysis revealed an extraordinary resistance to environmental stressors. The cells exhibited an unparalleled ability to thrive in hypoxic conditions, withstand extreme temperature fluctuations, and neutralize cellular toxins with remarkable speed. Their mitochondrial efficiency was off the charts, suggesting a metabolic prowess that could sustain immense physical exertion and rapid recovery. This wasn't merely advanced biology, it was an evolutionary leap, a testament to a creature that had seemingly mastered survival in the harshest, most demanding environments. It defied every known biological principle he had been taught, every textbook he had ever read. He mapped the genetic markers, finding long, intricate sequences that coded for these incredible properties. The DNA was structured in a way that maximized genetic stability while allowing for rapid adaptation. It was a masterpiece of biological engineering, far more sophisticated than any organism currently classified. This creature, whatever it was a marvel of resilience and power. Dr. Finch felt a growing sense of responsibility, a profound understanding that this discovery was not just about challenging scientific paradigms. It was about protecting something truly extraordinary. The insistent digital intrusions, the shadowy presence of Thorne's organization, now felt even more menacing. They sought to possess and control this wonder, to twist its inherent brilliance for their own dark ends. He knew with absolute certainty that he could not let that happen. The rhythmic echoes of the heart tissue, beating in synchronicity with his own, reinforced his resolve. He had to protect it, not just for science, but for a deeper, more personal reason he couldn't yet fully articulate. The rhythmic echoes of the heart tissue, beating in synchronicity with his own, didn't just reinforce his resolve, they unlocked a chamber in Dr. Finch's memory, a place he had meticulously walled off for years. The steady thrum, so full of life yet carrying an underlying cadence of vulnerability, resonated with a different heartbeat he had once known, one that now existed only in the painful recesses of his mind. A wave of fragmented images crashed over him, the pastel pink of a child's room, the scent of lavender and baby powder, the tiny hand gripping his finger. His breath hitched, a silent gasp caught in his throat as the memories, long suppressed, surged forward with unrelenting force. He saw the delicate curve of her cheek, the bright, curious eyes that mirrored his own, brimming with an unshakable innocence. Amelia, his daughter. The name was a whispered prayer, a forgotten melody suddenly played aloud. She had been a whirlwind of laughter and sunshine, a tiny supernova consuming his entire world. Then, the gradual dimming, the increasingly frail coughs, the bluish tinge to her lips that no amount of warmth could dispel, the doctor's hushed tones, the endless tests, the grim pronouncements. Congenital heart condition, so rare, they said, so aggressive, untreatable. His brilliant mind, capable of dissecting the most complex biological puzzles, had been utterly powerless against the relentless march of her illness. He remembered the desperate, frantic nights spent poring over medical journals, searching for a cure, a treatment, anything that could give his Amelia more time. Each failed attempt chipped away at his spirit, leaving behind a hollow ache that became his constant companion. The final days were a blur of sterile hospital rooms and the rhythmic beeping of machines mimicking a heartbeat that was slowly fading. He remembered holding her small, fragile hand, feeling the faint flutter beneath his thumb, a rhythm that was increasingly erratic, a desperate struggle for life. The silence that followed her last breath had been a deafening roar, a vacuum that sucked all joy and meaning from his existence. He had retreated then, from the world, from his colleagues, from all the vibrant life he once embraced, seeking solace in the detached objectivity of his isolated research. He had become a ghost in his own life, haunted by a heartbeat that no longer beat, by a laughter that had been eternally silenced. Now, the rhythmic cadence emanating from the specimen, so strong and vibrant, yet infused with a subtle, profound echo of vulnerability, stirred that dormant pain. It wasn't Amelia's heart, of course, but something in its unique pattern, in its resilient pulse, suggested a deep inherent connection to life's fragility, to the profound experience of both immense strength and devastating loss. It felt aware of these things, not just biologically, but almost empathetically. This heart, from an unknown creature, seemed to pulse with an understanding of grief, a silent testament to the universal language of existence and cessation. This sudden, visceral re-experience of his past loss threw Dr. Finch into a profound ethical quandary. The specimen before him was a miracle of biology, potentially holding secrets to regenerative medicine, unparalleled resilience, perhaps even the eradication of diseases that mirrored Amelia's own. But the very existence of such a creature, if revealed, would shake the foundations of human understanding. The world, he knew, was not kind to the unknown. His mind raced through the potential scenarios. Public hysteria, scientific exploitation, military application, the horrifying possibilities piled up. Could he, in good conscience, unleash this discovery upon a world that might only seek to subjugate or destroy it? Could he risk turning this biological marvel, this creature whose heart seemed to understand his deepest sorrow, into a scientific commodity, a weapon, or worse, a hunted prize? His professional duty as a scientist screamed for immediate disclosure, for sharing this paradigm-shifting knowledge with the global community. But the personal trauma, the memory of Amelia's fading heartbeat, whispered a different truth. Protect the vulnerable, guard the sacred, shield the extraordinary from the grasping hands of those who would pervert its nature. The potential to save countless lives, to prevent another parent from enduring his agony, warred fiercely with the imperative to safeguard this unique biological entity, an entity that might, in its own way, be sentient, capable of its own form of suffering. The echoes of Thorne's relentless pursuit, the increasing aggression of their digital probes, amplified his internal conflict. He understood, with chilling clarity, that Thorn represented the very exploitation he feared most. Suddenly, a searing alarm blared, ripping through the sterile quiet of his lab. Red lights flashed, casting sinister shadows across his carefully arranged equipment. The main security system, usually an impenetrable fortress, had been breached. He saw the feed from the external cameras flicker, then die. They weren't probing anymore, they were here. Thorn's organization had finally made their direct move. Adrenaline surged, cutting through his grief and ethical turmoil with a sharp, undeniable urgency. Years of paranoia and obsessive preparedness kicked in. He moved with practiced precision, his hands flying across keyboards, activating protocols he had designed for this very contingency. He initiated a full data wipe and transfer to an encrypted off-site server. The specimen, carefully preserved in its biocontainment unit, was too bulky to move quickly. He had to think fast to protect Dr. Badiatash's and his most critical, irreplaceable research notes. He grabbed a reinforced briefcase, stuffing primary data drives and essential holographic projections of the creature's cellular structure into it. The sounds of forced entry echoed from the main entrance downstairs. Heavy thuds, splintering wood. They were inside. Dr. Finch knew his lab was secure but not impenetrable against an armed assault. His escape route, meticulously planned years ago for a theoretical hostile takeover, was his only option. He activated the emergency override for the sub-basement access panel, a hidden door disguised behind a rotating bookshelf. As the heavy sounds of boots on his floorboards grew louder, nearing his inner sanctuary, he took one last, lingering look at the specimen, its rhythmic pulse a silent, powerful testament to the life he was fighting to protect. He slipped through the hidden door, sealing it behind him with a heavy thud, just as the main lab door burst open, revealing the armed, masked figures of Thorn's operatives. He was on the run, the briefcase clutched tightly in his hand, a fugitive carrying the greatest secret the world had never known. The chase had begun. The sudden, violent intrusion into his sanctuary had shattered any illusion of safety Dr. Finch had desperately clung to. The roar of the engines, the shattering of the reinforced lab door, the guttural shouts of Thorn's mercenaries, it all coalesced into a terrifying symphony of destruction. He had barely managed to activate the emergency protocols, securing the most vital research data onto an encrypted drive and snatching the specimen from its cryogenic chamber before a powerful explosion ripped through the main laboratory, consuming months of meticulous work in an inferno of fire and twisted metal. He knew then that his quiet, secluded life was irrevocably over. He was no longer just a scientist. He was a fugitive, a guardian of an unimaginable secret, and his life, along with the fate of the specimen, now hung precariously in the balance. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Dr. Finch navigated the familiar labyrinth of his property's hidden passages, a network he had meticulously built years ago, a testament to his innate paranoia and foresight. He emerged into the moonless night, the distant sirens and the acrid smell of smoke a stark reminder of the chaos he had left behind. His only chance lay in disappearing, in melting into the vast, indifferent wilderness that had once been his daughter's favorite playground, a place where they had spent countless summers exploring, laughing, and simply being. He remembered her bright eyes, her infectious curiosity as she pointed out a rare bird or a particularly exquisite fern. The memory was a bittersweet ache, a powerful motivator. His destination was a small, fortified cabin, nestled deep within a national forest, a relic from his hermit days before his daughter's illness, a place of profound solitude and painful memories. It was primitive, off-grid, and far removed from any conventional tracking systems. The journey there was a grueling test of endurance, both physical and mental. He drove through back roads, switched vehicles multiple times, and hiked for miles through dense undergrowth, the precious specimen secured in a specialized cooling unit in his backpack. Each rustle of leaves, each snapping twig, sent a jolt of paranoia through him. Thorn's reach was extensive, his methods ruthless. Finch knew he was racing against time, against an enemy that possessed limitless resources and no moral compass. Once safely entrenched in the cabin, its rustic walls a comforting bulwark against the hostile outside world, Dr. Finch set up his makeshift lab. The equipment was rudimentary compared to his state-of-the-art facility, but it was discreet and, more importantly, secure. He worked tirelessly, driven by a gnawing urgency, fueled by instant coffee and the memory of his daughter. Here, in the quiet solitude of the forest, the rhythmic thrum of the specimen's heart in its portable chamber seemed to acquire a new depth, a more primal resonance. He connected it to a simplified bioanalyzer, focusing on the subtle energetic emanations, the faint, almost imperceptible fluctuations that had hinted at something more than mere biological function. Days blurred into nights as he delved deeper, his intuition guiding his scientific inquiry. Free from the constant threat of intrusion, he allowed his mind to wander beyond conventional biological paradigms. He recorded intricate bioelectrical patterns, analyzed subtle shifts in cellular frequency, and observed how the heart tissue reacted to various environmental stimuli, even rudimentary acoustic vibrations. It was during one of these prolonged sessions, mapping complex neural-like pathways he hadn't noticed before, that he stumbled upon something astonishing. Hidden within the chaotic symphony of cellular activity, he discovered a unique biological marker, an intricate network of specialized peptide chains that formed a resonant frequency specific to the specimen. This wasn't merely a sign of advanced physical capabilities. It seemed to be a signature, a unique energetic blueprint. When he amplified this signature, translating it into a complex waveform, he noticed something extraordinary. The pattern, when presented to other tissue samples from the specimen, evoked a subtle, yet unmistakable, synchronized cellular response. It was as if the cells were listening and responding to a coded message. Further experimentation revealed that this message was not just a simple biological trigger, but a sophisticated energetic pattern that seemed to communicate states of being, distress, calm, even what seemed like a form of empathy. It was a profound, empathetic form of communication, a bioacoustic language woven into the very fabric of the creature's existence. This wasn't just a heart. It was a living, breathing, communicating organ capable of conveying complex emotional states through subtle energetic vibrations. The implications were staggering. It suggested a species capable of profound, nonverbal empathy, a level of interconnectedness that humanity could only dream of. Meanwhile, Thorne's organization was relentless. They were not accustomed to failure, and the escape of Dr. Finch, coupled with the loss of the specimen, was an unacceptable setback. Their vast resources were mobilized, their network of informants activated. Advanced satellite imagery, thermal scans, drone surveillance, every cutting-edge technology was deployed. They scoured every known affiliation, every past haunt of Dr. Finch, narrowing down the search radius with ruthless efficiency. His initial escape had bought him time, but it had also painted a target squarely on his back. The cabin, once a haven, now felt like a ticking clock. The first signs of their approach were subtle, an unfamiliar drone buzzing high above the tree line, a distinct break in the forest's natural silence, the faint hum of ground vehicles far in the distance, growing steadily louder. Dr. Finch, ever vigilant, his senses heightened by the constant threat, felt their presence bearing down on him. They were closing in. He stared at the glowing patterns on his makeshift monitor, the empathetic heart rhythm of the specimen pulsating a silent message, urging him forward, reminding him of its profound secret, a secret he was now bound to protect, even if it cost him everything. The wilderness around him, once a comforting embrace, now felt like a vast, treacherous arena for the inevitable confrontation. The rhythmic thrumming, which had initially captivated Dr. Finch as a mere physiological curiosity, gradually unfolded its deeper significance. It wasn't just a pattern of contractions and expansions. It was a symphony of complex frequencies, a bioacoustic signature unlike anything he had ever encountered. Through painstaking algorithmic analysis, a process that demanded every ounce of his intellectual prowess and all the computational power his cobbled-together system possessed, he began to decipher its subtle nuances. The heartbeat was a carrier wave for information, an intricate language woven into the very fabric of its existence. It communicated more than just life. It conveyed emotion. He isolated specific modulations within the intricate rhythm, correlating them with various cellular responses he had observed. There were oscillations that corresponded to resilience, others to rapid healing, but the most profound were those linked to a deep psychological state. The heart, in its complex dance of beats, expressed a profound sense of loss, a lingering sorrow that resonated with an almost unbearable intensity. It wasn't a sudden, acute grief, but a pervasive, enduring melancholy, a longing that seemed to echo through generations. This wasn't just a creature's heart, it was a living testament to a sentient being's capacity for profound emotional depth, a depth that mirrored his own unyielding ache for his lost daughter. The revelation struck him with the force of a physical blow, connecting him to the specimen not just scientifically, but soulfully. The creature's heart beat like his own, not simply in its physiological cadence, but in its capacity to hold and express an enduring, heartbreaking sense of longing. He understood now that his initial, almost spiritual connection was not irrational, but an intuitive recognition of a shared emotional landscape, a universal language of sorrow. His secluded sanctuary, the fortified cabin nestled deep within the towering pines, offered meager comfort as the storm of realization raged within him. The forest, once a haven of peace, now seemed to press in, its silence amplifying the emotional resonance of the heart's secret. He worked feverishly, documenting every minute detail, every emotional inflection decoded from the bioacoustic signature, driven by an urgent need to understand, to honor this profound connection. He knew his time was running out. The rhythmic pulse of the specimen, so laden with meaning, also felt like a ticking clock. Then, the first tremor, not of the earth, but of an intrusion into his carefully constructed solitude. A faint, almost imperceptible hum, growing louder, closer. The drone. Thorne's aerial reconnaissance. Dr. Finch cursed under his breath, his hands moving with practiced efficiency to secure his data and the precious specimen. He had anticipated this, preparing for weeks, but the reality of their imminent arrival still sent a jolt of ice through his veins. He had chosen this location for its natural defenses, the dense foliage, the treacherous terrain, the labyrinthine network of game trails known only to a few. He heard the crunch of boots on the forest floor, the distant shouts, the cold, calculating voices of Thorne's operatives. They were here, a dark stain on the pristine wilderness. Dr. Finch, now a hunted man protecting a secret that could redefine humanity, slipped out the back of the cabin, melting into the undergrowth like a phantom. He moved with an urgency born of desperation, clutching the secure case containing the heart tissue and the encrypted drive with all his research. He knew this forest intimately. Every rock, every dip, every hidden crevice was a potential advantage. He heard the rising crescendo of their approach, the breaking of twigs, the heavy breathing of trained men closing in. He kept to the deepest shadows, using the natural contours of the land, the dense thicket of rhododendrons, and the colossal, ancient trees as his shield. He could almost feel their presence, a chilling proximity. He knew these men wouldn't hesitate. They were instruments of Thorne's unwavering ambition, devoid of compassion. As he navigated a particularly dense section of ancient forest, a place where the sunlight barely pierced the canopy, casting elongated, dancing shadows, he paused instinctively. A stillness descended, a profound silence that seemed to swallow even the sounds of his pursuers. He felt it before he saw it, a colossal presence, a shift in the very air around him. Slowly, cautiously, he turned his head. There, partially obscured by the immense trunk of an ancient cedar, stood a figure of impossible scale. It was immense, cloaked in dark, shaggy fur that seemed to absorb the scant light. Its outline was unmistakably humanoid, yet powerfully primal, a creature of myth made manifest. It moved with an almost ethereal grace, a silent, powerful guardian of the deep woods. Its eyes, though distant, held a depth of ancient wisdom, a melancholic intelligence that sent a shiver of understanding down Dr. Finch's spine. This was no hallucination, no trick of the light induced by stress and exhaustion. This was real, a living Sasquatch. The profound sorrow encoded in the heart tissue, the pervasive sense of loss, suddenly made agonizing sense. This specimen wasn't just a biological anomaly. It was a fallen member of this hidden species, perhaps mourned, perhaps missed. The creature in the shadows, the one watching him with such unnerving intensity, was its kin. And in that moment, as Thorne's men crashed through the undergrowth, their shouts shattering the ancient silence, Dr. Finch knew with absolute certainty that he was not alone in this fight. He was caught between two worlds, the relentless pursuit of human ambition and the silent, ancient vigilance of the forest's true inhabitants. His purpose, once focused purely on scientific discovery, had now irrevocably shifted. He was no longer just a scientist. He was a silent, desperate bridge between humanity and a truth it was not yet ready to comprehend. The shouts grew louder, closer, tearing through the fragile sanctity of the forest. Dr. Finch's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the impending chaos. He glanced back at the towering figure partially hidden by the cedar. Its eyes, now more clearly discernible, held a profound, almost sorrowful intensity. It was still there, observing, a silent sentinel in the face of human avarice. He knew he was cornered. The dense undergrowth, once his ally, now felt like a cage. The voices of Thorne's men echoed from multiple directions, encircling him, their flashlights cutting harsh beams through the twilight gloom. "Finch, give it up! There's nowhere to run!" One voice boomed, sharp and devoid of empathy. He clutched the secure case tighter, its smooth surface a cold comfort. Inside, the heart tissue, the very essence of the creature whose living kin now watched him, pulsed with a silent rhythm. This rhythm, he realized, was his last resort, his only weapon against their overwhelming force. He fumbled in his pack, pulling out the compact, high-frequency audio emitter he had designed to analyze the bioacoustic signatures of the specimen. It was rudimentary, modified for field use, but powerful enough to broadcast the unique frequency he had painstakingly deciphered. This wasn't just a physical trait, it was a language, a cry of profound loss and longing. Could it bridge the gap between species? Could it even be heard, let alone understood, by the creature lurking in the shadows? He had to try. With trembling fingers, he activated the device, selecting the specific sequence of frequencies that represented the most poignant, sorrowful rhythm he had extracted from the heart tissue. A low, resonant hum began to emanate from the small speaker, a vibration that seemed to ripple through the very ground beneath his feet. It wasn't a sound one heard with ears alone. It was a frequency that resonated deep within the chest, a primal thrum that spoke of ancient grief and connection. The effect was instantaneous and startling. The approaching shouts of Thorne's men faltered, replaced by confused exclamations. Their flashlights darted erratically as they instinctively reacted to the unfamiliar, disorienting sound. Dr. Finch, however, kept his gaze fixed on the shadow at the edge of the forest. The colossal figure began to move. It stepped out from behind the cedar, its massive form now fully visible. It was even larger than he had first perceived, a magnificent, powerful being covered in thick, dark fur that blended seamlessly with the night. Its eyes, luminous and intelligent, were fixed on him, and then, as if drawn by an invisible thread, they shifted, focusing intensely on the small emitter in his hand. A low, almost imperceptible rumble resonated from its chest, a sound that seemed to harmonize with the broadcast rhythm. Then, the Sasquatch moved. It didn't charge, nor did it attack. Instead, it moved with a deliberate, sorrowful grace towards the source of the emitted sound. Its immense hand, surprisingly delicate, reached out towards Dr. Finch, not with aggression, but with what felt like a gesture of profound empathy. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met, and in that gaze, Dr. Finch saw a reflection of his own grief, his own longing for what was lost. The creature understood. It understood the language of sorrow that beat within the specimen, a language that transcended species, a universal lament for absence. The Sasquatch then turned, its massive frame intercepting the path of the encroaching operatives. It let out a guttural roar, a sound that tore through the forest's silence, shaking the leaves from the trees and sending shivers down Dr. Finch's spine. It was not a roar of aggression, but one of raw, protective power, a warning that brooked no argument. Thorne's men, hardened and cynical as they were, hesitated. The sight of the creature, a living legend, a primal force of nature, stopped them dead in their tracks. Their flashlights wavered, their confident shouts replaced by gasps of disbelief and fear. This was their turning point. The Sasquatch, with astonishing speed and agility for its size, began to create a diversion. It didn't engage them directly in combat, but it moved with such overwhelming presence, such earth-shattering movements, that it became an undeniable obstacle. It tore down a thick, rotting log with a single, powerful swipe, sending it crashing into their path. It uprooted a sapling, its roots tearing free of the earth with a sound like thunder, and tossed it aside, effectively blocking a narrow trail. Its movements were strategic, calculated to disrupt and disorient, not to harm outright. "What in God's name is that?" one of the operatives screamed, his voice laced with terror. "It's a Bigfoot!" another stammered, dropping his rifle. Panic was beginning to set in among Thorne's well-trained men. Their scientific skepticism, their ruthless efficiency, crumbled in the face of the impossible. This was Dr. Finch's chance. The Sasquatch had bought him precious seconds, a window of opportunity. He scrambled away, deeper into the forest, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilarated disbelief. He risked a glance back. The Sasquatch stood tall amidst the chaos it had created, its silhouette powerful and defiant against the pale moonlight filtering through the canopy. It was holding their attention, drawing them further away from him, its eyes still carrying that same profound, sorrowful understanding. He ran, weaving through the trees, the image of the creature etched into his mind. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to escape, to protect the specimen, to honor the silent sacrifice of the Sasquatch. He crashed through a dense thicket, branches tearing at his clothes, his face stinging from scrapes. He could hear the shouts of Thorne's men, now mingled with genuine fear and the sounds of their disarray. They were no longer pursuing him with laser focus. They were reacting to the raw, untamed power of the wilderness, embodied by the Sasquatch. He found a hidden crevice, a natural cave opening he remembered from his childhood expeditions with his daughter, partially concealed by an ancient, gnarled root system. It was small, barely enough to squeeze into, but it offered temporary refuge. He burrowed inside, pulling branches and leaves over the opening, effectively camouflaging himself. He carefully placed the secure case containing the heart tissue beside him, his scientific data, primarily stored on external drives, close at hand. He realized with a sickening lurch that in his desperate escape, some of his handwritten notes, crucial to deciphering the more subtle bioacoustic patterns, had been torn from his pack, likely scattered somewhere on the forest floor. A significant loss, but not insurmountable. He lay there, catching his breath, listening to the receding sounds of the chase, the fading roars of the Sasquatch, and the increasingly distant, terrified shouts of Thorne's men. The forest slowly settled back into its natural rhythm, a symphony of night sounds replacing the cacophony of conflict. The Sasquatch had seemingly vanished, melting back into the shadows from which it had emerged, leaving behind only the undeniable truth of its existence and a profound sense of awe. Dr. Finch was safe for now. The specimen was safe, and he had witnessed an intervention born of empathy, a connection forged not through words, but through the universal language of a beating heart. He was no longer just protecting a scientific discovery, he was safeguarding a secret shared with a guardian of the wild, a secret that bound them together in a silent, powerful alliance. The forest pulsed with an ancient energy, a silent testimony to the profound connection that now bound Dr. Finch to the wild. After the harrowing escape, the echoes of the Sasquatch's thunderous intervention still reverberated in his mind, a visceral reminder of a world unseen. He had secured the remaining heart tissue and his critical research data deep within a hidden crevice, camouflaged meticulously, a secret sanctuary known only to him. The damaged research notes, though a painful loss, served as a stark reminder of the peril he had faced and the immense sacrifice of the creature that had saved him. The Sasquatch, a fleeting shadow in the chaos, had vanished as mysteriously as it appeared, leaving him with an undeniable burden of knowledge and a profound sense of responsibility. Alistair Finch knew then that exposing this discovery to the human world, especially after witnessing Thorne's ruthless pursuit, would be a catastrophic mistake. Humanity, in its ravenous hunger for dominance and exploitation, was not ready for such a truth. The creature's heart, beating with an empathic rhythm, represented a level of consciousness and connection that would be twisted, weaponized, or simply destroyed by those who feared the unknown. His new purpose solidified in the quiet solitude of the wilderness. He would become their silent guardian, an unseen advocate for a species that deserved protection, not dissection. He retreated from the immediate area, moving to a new, even more remote location. This wasn't abandonment, but a strategic withdrawal to better serve his newfound mission. He spent weeks, then months, analyzing the salvaged data, cross-referencing acoustic patterns from his recordings with environmental factors and even his own emotional states. He developed sophisticated bioacoustic sensors disguised as wildlife monitoring equipment and deployed them in strategic, isolated pockets of the dense forest, areas where he suspected the Sasquatch might roam. His goal was not to track them for capture, but to understand their patterns, their movements, and most importantly, their unique form of empathetic communication without ever intruding upon their existence. It was a delicate dance between scientific pursuit and respectful observation, a constant internal debate about the ethical boundaries of his work. The insights he gleaned were astonishing. The heart rhythm, once a mere biological curiosity, revealed itself as a complex symphony of emotion. He began to discern patterns associated with distress, with contentment, with the subtle nuances of familial bonds within the hidden Sasquatch community. It was a language without words, a tapestry woven from the very pulse of life itself, echoing the profound, unspoken connections he had often felt with his own lost daughter. He realized that the creature's heart beat like his own, not just in its physical rhythm, but in its capacity for profound emotion, grief, solidarity, and an innate understanding of connection that transcended species. While he protected the major secret, Dr. Finch felt a compelling need to share at least a fragment of his groundbreaking work, a subtle nod to the scientific community that something extraordinary existed. He spent a year meticulously crafting a theoretical paper, an academic ghost, hinting at his findings without revealing the true source. Titled Bioacoustic Empathic Communication, a Theoretical Framework for Interspecies Emotional Synchronicity, it was a masterpiece of scientific obfuscation, filled with complex mathematical models and abstract biological concepts. It hypothesized a form of non-auditory biorhythmic communication capable of conveying complex emotional states across biological divides. He carefully removed any direct references to the Sasquatch, any mention of the unique cellular structures, any detail that could lead Thorne or others to his true research. The paper was anonymously submitted to an obscure peer-reviewed journal focused on theoretical biophysics and, to his surprise, was accepted. It created a minor ripple in academic circles, praised by some as visionary, dismissed by others as highly speculative, but crucially, it flew under the radar of those who would exploit such knowledge. The publication offered him a strange sense of catharsis, a way to honor the Sasquatch's existence without endangering it. He had found a new purpose, a solace that began to mend the gaping wound left by his daughter's death. The forest, once a place of scientific pursuit, then desperate flight, had become a sanctuary, a living testament to mysteries yet to be fully understood. He understood now that some truths were too fragile, too sacred, for the harsh scrutiny of the world. Some mysteries were best left unrevealed, protected by silent guardians who understood the delicate balance between discovery and preservation. Often, in the quiet evenings, as he reviewed the latest bioacoustic readings from his sensors, a specific rhythm would emerge, a pattern that resonated deeply within him, a familiar echo of the Sasquatch's mournful call. It was a poignant reminder of the interconnectedness of all life, a silent promise to protect the heart that beat not just like his own, but for a world that deserved to remain hidden. He had become one with the pulse of the forest, a man transformed by grief and discovery, now a silent sentinel for the hidden giants of the wilderness. He knew his work was far from over, but the path ahead, though solitary, was clear, guided by the unseen rhythm of a beating heart. If this profound story of hidden wonders, of empathy across species, and the delicate balance between science and secrecy has touched your own heart, consider giving it a like and sharing it with those who appreciate the extraordinary. What other unseen marvels do you believe might exist, patiently waiting to be understood but not exploited in our vast and mysterious world? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments section below. And for more thrilling tales of discovery, mystery, and the untold wonders of our world, do not forget to subscribe to our channel and click that bell icon to be notified when our next captivating narrative unfolds.